Some stories break you, some heal you. But here at My 90s Love Story, we're here to fill your heart. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. When I was 19, I died in a car accident. The birthday cake I'd bought for Daniel was crushed into paste on the road. That year, Daniel was 20, and he held my bloodied body and wouldn't let go, even after the heart monitor went silent and stopped moving at all. I was drifting in the air above the hospital bed, and the girl lying on it was me. I think I really had died. Only Daniel stayed beside me. He held my hand, buried his face in the white sheet, and cried until he couldn't breathe. I reached out to touch him, but my hand passed straight through him, and that was when I understood. I was a ghost now. My parents rushed in, leaning on each other, barely able to stand. I wanted to go back into my body, because if I was gone, it would break their hearts. But it was too late. I couldn't go back. The funeral wasn't large. Daniel came. The girl in the photograph was still smiling, but I couldn't smile at all. My parents had only one daughter, and that was me. What was I supposed to do? Daniel's birthday had become the day I died. He would blame himself for the rest of his life. What could I do? Nothing. A ghost has no tears. I didn't even have anywhere to put my anger. Maybe because I'd died so suddenly, my parents laid all the blame on Daniel. My mother beat at him with her fists, and he didn't move, like a wooden puppet. She said it was all his fault. If Ivy hadn't gone to buy him a birthday cake, none of this would have happened. It was all because of him. Mom, don't blame him. I hovered between them and tried to block the words with my body, words that fell like knives. But the knives passed right through me and drove straight into Daniel. Only months before, my mother had taken Daniel's hand and asked him to take good care of me. Only months before, Daniel had been asking me what gift we should buy her. Only months before, the two of us were the childhood sweethearts everyone envied. Daniel apologized to my mother. The boy who used to drop by our house to eat whenever he had nothing better to do now didn't dare set foot in the Sullivan home anymore. Ivy Sullivan, 19 years old, had become the scar on Daniel's heart. In the first year after I died, Daniel was 21, and he was diagnosed with depression. He dropped out of school. He stayed in his room day and night, and I watched him paint one picture after another. Brushes and tubes of paint were scattered across the floor, and the pill bottles lay among them, buried under all those bright colors. What did he paint? He painted Ivy at 5, with a little clip in her hair, hugging a cloth doll. He painted Ivy at 6, wearing a backpack on her first day of elementary school. He painted Ivy at 8, crying on a bicycle because she couldn't learn to ride it. He painted Ivy at 9, switching on the lamp to draw. He painted Ivy at 10, sitting at a piano for the first time, not knowing what to make of it. He painted Ivy at 11, wearing the party hat that only the birthday girl gets to wear. He painted Ivy at 12, sitting on the windowsill making a sulky face alone in her room. He painted Ivy at 13, chin propped on her hands, staring off at nothing. He painted Ivy at 14, dozing off over her homework. He painted Ivy at 15, holding a camera and taking his picture. He painted Ivy at 16, up at midnight with the lamp on, catching up on her summer assignments. He painted Ivy at 17, at the zoo, feeding leaves to a giraffe. He painted Ivy at 18, in a delicate dress with her makeup done, on the day of her coming-of-age ceremony. He painted Ivy at 19, the girl who, after her college entrance exams, had gone with him to the coast to gather seashells on the beach. Daniel used to say his brush was born to paint me, but his little muse couldn't be painted anymore. He couldn't paint Ivy at 20. Countless canvases piled up in the corner of the room. Daniel sat in front of a blank sheet and couldn't add a single stroke. In the end, a little color did stain the paper. Gray. I drifted closer to see what it was. It was gray because it was Daniel's tears. "Daniel, don't cry," I said. He didn't hear me. I tried to help him gather the brushes scattered on the floor, but I couldn't lift even one, so I gave up. I flew around in front of his face the way I always used to, and tugged at my own cheeks to make him laugh. But his eyes were empty. That emptiness left a hole in my heart, too. Every day I hovered beside him and watched him move through the same dull life like a machine. Then something happened. Daniel cut his wrist on his birthday. His mother had brought a cake over, and when she knocked and no one answered for a long time, she let herself in and found that he'd slit his wrist. The cake had been tossed carelessly aside. He was rushed to the hospital, and thank God they got to him in time. Daniel was still alive. His mother wept and told him, "Ivy would never want to see you like this. Listen to me. No more foolish things, all right?" Daniel answered her in a daze. And after that, he didn't do anything foolish again. I was still frightened, though. If his mother hadn't walked in that day, the two of us would have ended up a couple of drifting ghosts. There's no denying he loved me terribly. But it was the first time I'd ever felt this way. I didn't want Daniel to love me. If he didn't love me, he could go on living a good life. In the second year after I died, Daniel was 22, and he went back to school. They say that once you get to college, the studying gets easier. I'd clawed my way through my last year of high school, about to start college myself, and then I just up and died. Daniel had a lot of friends, and when he came back, they all greeted him. One of them, with dyed red hair, looked very familiar. He'd been in school with Daniel since they were boys. His name was Jesse Lawson. Whenever he used to see me, he'd grin and say, "Well, if it isn't Daniel's little sweetheart." But this time, he didn't even dare say my name. Some wounds hurt the moment you so much as touch them. Jesse and Daniel had been inseparable as kids back in school, and you could see with your own eyes how much better Daniel was getting. Later, Jesse got a girlfriend and stopped coming to class with him as often. On the 20th of May, Jesse came running over, thrilled, his voice bright. "Daniel," he said, "Poppy and I are going to the amusement park. Do you want to come?" Poppy was Jesse's girlfriend. Daniel froze for a second, then shook his head and pointed at his blank canvas. "Can't. Haven't finished this yet." Jesse made a face. Fine, I know you love studying." Daniel laughed despite himself and started bickering with him. The sunlight fell over Daniel. Even his hair was bathed in it. I stared, dazzled. Worth it, the boyfriend I'd picked was so handsome. If he weren't, there wouldn't have been so many people willing to push past how unapproachable he seemed, just to talk to him. It was such an ordinary day. Such an ordinary Daniel. And it was ruined on the night of the 20th of May. I watched him take his medicine and lie down, and then I dozed off too. Around 2 in the morning, I saw a big monster on the bed, and I was so scared I thought I'd run into one of my own kind. Yes, even ghosts are afraid of ghosts. I looked closer. It was Daniel. Why was he still up in the middle of the night? I floated over to see what he was doing. He was only sitting there staring at nothing. I let out a breath. He couldn't sleep and neither could I, so I just drifted around him. His hair was standing up like a bird's nest. I reached out to touch it, and my hand went straight through his head, like something out of a cartoon. As I stretched my fingers out and pulled them back, it looked like a hand was growing right out of his head. I was having a wonderful time. Then Daniel suddenly bowed his head and buried it between his knees, and thin, weak sobs began to come out of him. I snatched my hand back, my heart pounding, aching. "Daniel, I'm not playing anymore. Please don't cry." There wasn't even anyone to comfort him in my place. He must have been thinking about the amusement park. We met at an amusement park. Daniel was 19. The day his college entrance exams ended, he took me there. I was still in my school uniform, hurrying to keep up with him. When we got off the roller coaster, my face had gone white as paper. "Ivy," he said, "let's take a picture. You look so pale right now." I shot him a withering look, and he just laughed. We stood under the roller coaster making faces at each other like fools. After the photo, Daniel started teasing me. Ivy, I finished my exams. Shouldn't you give me something? What do you want? I asked. He went quiet. I turned and looked at him, suspicious, and my eyes met his. In all the noise of the park, he said, very softly, Ivy, let's be together. Very softly, but I heard him. I said, okay. If I'd known how it would end, I wouldn't have said yes so quickly. And now, he was crying as if his heart would break, like something fragile that a hammer named Ivy kept striking over and over until it shattered into little pieces. In the 3rd year after I died, Daniel was 23, and he met a girl. The truth is, he'd met plenty of girls over those 3 years, but she's the only one I remember because she looked so much like me. How much? The first time Daniel saw her, he called her Ivy. I stood next to him and scolded him. Oh, so now you can't even tell your own girl apart from a stranger. Her name wasn't Ivy. Her name was Maya Ellis. Fate is a strange thing. Meet someone once and you'll meet them 100 times. Daniel kept running into her all over campus. Finally, in the library, Maya asked him for his number, and that was when I realized none of it had been coincidence. It had been arranged. Daniel didn't say anything. I looked at Maya. She seemed a little embarrassed, but she stubbornly stood there waiting for his answer. To my surprise, Daniel turned her down, but the more she failed, the braver she got. She found his number somehow and kept texting him. Daniel would reply now and then, just a line or two, always the same refusal. And yet she really was different. I knew she was different, and it was only because of her face. I wanted Daniel to step out of the shadow I'd left him in, and selfishly, at the same time, I wanted him to love no one but me, forever. Some people say that when a person dies, their soul doesn't scatter and doesn't move on to a new life because it still has a will of its own. Others say a soul can't be reborn because it's held here by something it can't let go of. I'd been a ghost for 3 years. Maybe what I couldn't let go of was that I'd never care for my parents in their old age. Maybe it was that I couldn't stay beside Daniel. There were people here who loved me. How could I bear to leave them? Daniel didn't accept Maya. That night she asked him who the girl in his profile picture was. Daniel looked at the photo again and again, and finally typed 3 words. My girlfriend. A girlfriend who'd been dead 3 years. I let out a breath, and then blamed my own selfishness for why I'd been so worried in the first place. Daniel started talking to himself, to the empty air. Ivy, he said, I really thought you'd come back. Ivy, no one can ever replace you. Ivy, I miss you so much. Ivy, can you hear me? I miss you so much. I can hear you, Daniel. I can hear all of it. In the 4th year after I died, Daniel was 24 and about to graduate. He'd started his graduation project months earlier and still hadn't finished it. He painted mountains, painted the sea, painted flowers and grass. I thought all of it was beautiful, but he wasn't satisfied with a single piece. Maybe that's just the torment of being a painter. I had my own torment. For some reason, I could only ever stay beside Daniel. I badly wanted to see my parents, but my mother still thought of him as the boy who'd gotten me killed, and he couldn't so much as step through the Sullivans' door. During those troubled days, Daniel made up his mind to go somewhere far away to find inspiration. He packed a bag and set off for the borderlands. It's a fine thing being young. You decide to go, and you just go. The train rumbled along, and the whole way there was nothing but wide-open grassland. Daniel hauled a pile of painting supplies up onto the high plateau. The thin air didn't sit well with him. Both his cheeks flushed red, and he had to breathe from an oxygen canister to get by. A good thing I was a ghost, or I definitely would have thrown myself at those red cheeks to rub them. On sheer stubbornness, Daniel climbed the mountain, and at the top, he dumped out all his supplies. I was off watching the yaks, wondering whether they could see me. When I turned back around, Daniel had already painted more than half a canvas. They say inspiration is like a wind. Once it comes, there's no stopping it. He worked right up until the sun went down, and then he carefully lifted the painting off the easel. I don't know anything about art. I only thought it was pretty. From a distance, I could see two people in it. I pointed at the figures and asked him, "Who's this?" He didn't answer. I'd forgotten he couldn't hear me. I looked more carefully and guessed one of them was Daniel. While I was still wondering, I heard him say, "Ivy, I brought you to see the snow mountains." So the other one was me. Standing in front of white snow-covered mountains had been a wish of mine for a long time. Back then, I'd made Daniel promise that once I got to college, we'd go see the snow someday. Now that I was looking at it, I felt a small pang of regret. Every single wish of mine, Daniel remembered perfectly. On the way back, Daniel got a call from his mother. "Ivy's parents have had a baby girl," she said. "Do you want to come see her?" Daniel's voice went cold in a way that frightened me. "No, I'm not going." I'd been floating there thrilled, and suddenly I froze. Why wasn't Daniel happy? I couldn't understand it. I was an only child. Before I died, I'd worried that one day there'd be no one to look after my parents. They weren't old yet. There was still time for them to have another child. It meant they'd stepped out of the shadow I'd left behind. Surely that was something to be glad about. But Daniel wasn't glad. When he got home, he sat and stared at the photo frame by his bed. "Ivy, your parents had another baby." I nodded. "I know." "Ivy, are they going to forget you?" I was stunned. In all my years as a ghost, I truly had never once thought about that. I turned it over for a while, then gave him my answer. "No, they won't." Daniel pulled the frame under the blanket with him and said, "Lo, Ivy, I will never forget you." I floated gently over and lay down beside him. It's all right if they forget, I thought. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. Those tangled up feelings faded. Maybe Daniel should find a new love, someone to walk beside him so he wouldn't keep drowning in the grief of my death. That vast mountain rose up in my mind again, its peak all white, wreathed in mist, a free and open life. Daniel, be like a bird and fly to your own mountain. So forget me, Daniel. I'll forgive you. I really will. In the 5th year after I died, Daniel was 25, and he walked through the Sullivan's door. It was an ordinary afternoon. He drove to my house himself. It had been so long that I didn't even recognize the road home on the way there. My father opened the door, startled for a moment to see Daniel, but he waved him inside. I drifted through the house. My room had been locked up. The television had been swapped for a bigger one. The little potted tree I used to keep was still alive, and there were a few new plants out on the balcony. My mother was in the bedroom, and beside the big bed stood a small one, a little crib, and inside it a new life my parents had poured all their hope into. My mother had come to understand things. She didn't blame Daniel anymore. "Hold her," she said. Daniel stepped over and took the baby, and his clumsiness made me nervous. "Don't you dare hurt my little sister. Her name was Faith Sullivan. Faith, as in peace and safety." It was a nicer name than mine. After holding her a while, Daniel laid Faith back in the crib. I flew over faster than I'd ever moved in my life and looked straight into her eyes. Her little face was as round as a bun. Honestly, there was nothing remarkable to see, and yet I couldn't look away. "Hello," I said to her. "I'm Ivy. I'm your big sister." And she suddenly smiled, as if she could see me. I leaned in closer to get a better look, and then I heard my mother say my name. "Ivy's been gone for years now," she said. Daniel answered, "Yes. She was a good girl. What happened back then was just a moment of madness." "Yes," Daniel said again. "Have you gotten past it?" The question caught him off guard. After a moment, he smiled and looked toward the crib. I flinched away out of habit. Only later did I remember he couldn't see me. I heard him say, "Maybe." From that day on, whenever Daniel had free time, he came running back to the Sullivan house, just like the old days. Only before, he'd come to see Ivy, and now he came to be with my parents, to be with Faith. The two families were as close as they'd ever been. I told you. After more than 10 years as neighbors, how could my mother hate Daniel for the rest of her life? That year, I let go of a lot of things I'd been holding on to. That year, Daniel started working. And I realized that the loud, hot-tempered boy he used to be could now put on a suit and move through a room full of people with confidence. He held his own art exhibition. My little artist had become a great one. There were so many paintings of me. A young woman with a camera asked him, "Is the girl in these paintings someone important to you?" Daniel looked at me on the canvas and said, gently, "Yes. That's my girlfriend." Daniel at 25 still kept a place set aside for Ivy. In the 6th year after I died, Daniel opened his own studio. It drew in other painters, and one day they were all clamoring for him to paint something for them. Daniel set up an easel, mixed his colors, and began to sketch the outline of a woman. And then, for some reason, he stopped. His students waited eagerly, asking what was wrong. I wanted to ask too, but he suddenly stood up, dunked his brush into the water bucket so hard it splashed, and said, "I'm not painting anymore." His students were confused, but they didn't push him. I could tell something was wrong with Daniel, but I didn't know what. If only I were a fly on his wall so I could know everything going on inside him. He drove home, and in that messy room, he dug around until he finally pulled out a photo album. The cover was so familiar to me. We'd bought it together to hold pictures of the two of us, and I used to call it our love album. Daniel turned the pages one after another, as if he could never look at them enough. I had a vague, sinking idea of what it was. He'd forgotten what I looked like, and yet, as he went through the album, he stayed calm. Just as I was sighing to myself that Daniel had finally grown up, his eyes went red, and he wiped his tears with one hand while he kept turning pages with the other. I'd guessed wrong. Daniel was still the same Daniel. He'd only wrapped himself in a shell of steel. Inside, he was still glass, and glass can shatter over nothing more than forgetting the shape of Ivy's face. I sighed and gently put my arms around him, and my hands passed through his body and closed on nothing but empty air. A helplessness I couldn't put into words swept over me. I'd given him happiness and memories, and then left him with nothing but endless longing and endless pain. "Ivy, I've forgotten what you look like," he told himself. "Ivy, don't be angry with me. I'll remember. I'll try so hard to remember. I'm not angry with you. Ivy, you ought to hate me for leaving you all alone. Hate me and then forget me. Ivy, I don't hate you. I love you." His tears fell right through my palm, and still they left a raw, burning ache behind. I'd honestly rather he hated me. "Daniel, forget me, I'm sorry." What a shame he couldn't hear. In the 7th year after I died, Daniel was 27, and he went alone to the coast. It wasn't far from where we lived. I'd gone there with him once after my college entrance exams, the last time we were ever together before I died. Just like the trip to the Snow Mountains, he grabbed a little suitcase and simply went. He chose to go in summer. We'd gone in summer too. He went by himself to the old town where there were rows of handicraft stalls. I trailed after him around and around, but we couldn't find the old man who used to carve wood there. The truth is, that old man's carvings couldn't really be called good, but they were so bad they were wonderful. Normally Daniel can't stand ugly things, but when something is ugly enough, he has to have one. He held up the wooden figure he'd just bought, lifted it over his head, and announced, "This is Ivy." The thing had no nose and no eyes. How on earth did it look like me? I was angry about it all morning and refused to speak to him. He went by himself to the old city wall. It looked even more weathered than before, but there were still crowds of tourists taking pictures against it. Daniel and I had taken pictures there too. That day, I hadn't put on sunscreen, and Daniel had fussed the whole time about wanting to shoot in the bright sun, and I wouldn't let him. There were characters carved into the wall. I suppose that counts as a scenic spot. Daniel said he wanted a photo, and I spotted a patch of shade at the foot of the wall, so I grudgingly agreed. The two of us grinned and took the most standard tourist photo there is, ugly and a little dopey. Daniel posted it online. That was the very photo Maya once asked me about. I'd thought it was ugly and hadn't posted it myself. He went by himself to the flower park. Lots of flowers means lots of mosquitoes. I'd worn a dress and gotten bitten all over. Daniel always used to carry a can of bug spray and spray wherever he went, calling himself Ivy's guardian warrior. As you'd expect, no matter where Daniel goes, he manages to stand out. In the end, a staff member confiscated the can because he'd sprayed far too much. He went by himself to the beach. The sunset, the sea, a long dress and long hair. It should have looked lovely, but the wind was so strong my hair whipped every which way like seaweed. I was smoothing it down on the left, then on the right, until I looked like some wailing ghost woman. In the middle of my flailing, a hand reached from behind and gathered all my hair together, and with my hands and my view suddenly free, I could finally take in the scenery. But then Daniel turned me around to face him. The waves rose and fell with a soft rushing sound, and everything around us went quiet. "Ivy," he said, "can we kiss?" I stared at his red ears, my heart ready to leap out of my chest. I said, "Okay." Daniel bought all sorts of things at the coast, from the wooden figure to seashells to a few local specialties, and in the end had them all shipped to my house. Faith played with them, delighted. My mother didn't ask Daniel whether he'd gotten past it. She only smiled and said, "Our Daniel has grown up." In the 8th year after I died, Daniel was 28, and he got into a fight with his mother. It was at a family dinner. A woman about his mother's age had brought a child along, and she teased him. "Our Daniel's all grown up, so how come he still isn't married?" That one remark left his mother unsettled, and when they got home that night, it boiled over. Though it wasn't really a fight so much as his mother being furious all on her own. "Ivy's been gone for 8 years, she said. "What good does it do you to keep watch over a dead girl for 8 years? She stole your heart clean away. Have you ever once thought about how I feel? You've got a real career now. You're not bad looking. Do you really have to do this over someone who died years ago?" Daniel bowed his head, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking. The year I first died, my own mother called Daniel the boy who killed me. In the 8th year, Daniel's mother called me a demon who'd ruined him. And yet, a long, long time ago, Daniel's mother had held my hand and smiled at me so warmly. "Ivy," she'd said, "when you're older, would you want to be my daughter-in-law?" Back then, I'd blushed and stammered out an answer. Now she'd been driven half mad, hating me. A soft crying started up. Daniel's mother sitting on the sofa, weeping. I wanted to say sorry to her. I was the one who dragged Daniel down with me. But she couldn't hear me. Daniel took a tissue and wiped her tears. And once she'd calmed a little, she asked him just one thing. "Will you get married?" It was like a single peaceful shot fired, the last bullet before the peace. And the war ended, at last, with Daniel giving in. "In 2 years," he said, "in 2 years I'll get married." In the 9th year after I died, Daniel was 29, and he started going on blind dates. The women he met changed constantly. He still hadn't found the right one. Daniel was too blunt. When his dates asked why he was doing this, why he was blind dating at all, nearly every time he'd say, "I just want to start a family." That one line, which sounded so hard to trust, was exactly why Daniel kept getting turned down. How can you build a family with no foundation of love? That was the question I heard most often. It wasn't until later that he found the right person, a very gentle woman, an elementary school teacher. "Building a family doesn't have to be built on love," she said. "We're not young anymore. We need a place to finally settle." She was right. When people grow tired, they need somewhere to rest, and a family is the best harbor there is. Daniel smiled, and I really was happy for him. He'd wandered inside Ivy's shadow for 9 years, and at last, he wanted a harbor of his own. That year, I was beside Daniel for his birthday. It had been a long time since I'd spent his birthday with him, because his birthday was the day I died, a truly unlucky thing. That day, when he came home as usual, a whole crowd of his friends appeared out of nowhere, led by Jesse, holding a not very big cake. This year, Daniel didn't chase them out the way he had every year before. He took the cake and sat down on the sofa, and Jesse absolutely insisted on setting that silly little paper crown on his head. Someone turned off the lights, and there was only the candle, softly flickering. Daniel didn't make a wish. He just quietly watched that little flame, and it made his face so gentle. I flew around to face him, looked right at him, and said, "Daniel, happy 29th birthday." And right then, he blew the candle out. The last of the light was gone, and the room fell into darkness. His friends sang happy birthday to him, and I softly sang along with them. Happy birthday, happy birthday. The tune stretched out sweet and long and ended in a burst of cheers. Happy birthday, Daniel! Congratulations at 29 on stepping out of Ivy's shadow. Congratulations at 29 on leaving the world of 19-year-old Ivy. Congratulations at 29 on beginning a life that belongs to Daniel. In the 10th year after I died, Daniel was 30 and he got married. The bride was the woman from his blind date. The wedding wasn't large, and my parents were invited too. There were a lot of people in the hall. Faith came, 5 years old now, her hair in little braids, wearing a darling princess dress. She's a glutton like me, and she drank cup after cup of juice. So before the ceremony began, she went off to the bathroom by herself. My Faith is a clever girl, only 5, and already going on her own. I followed her in. She was running too fast and nearly took a spill. But a woman caught her, my old desk mate from high school. She seemed happy to see Faith and knelt down to fix the girl's crooked braid. Faith was so well behaved she didn't move a muscle. And once it was fixed, she said thank you and darted off. I was about to fly away when I heard the woman murmur, "She looks exactly like Ivy." Like me? I pictured Faith's big eyes and round little face, and I couldn't help laughing. Looking like me is no bad thing. Plenty of people used to say I was pretty. Faith is sure to grow up beautiful. I drifted happily back to the hall. The wedding had just begun. The bride swept her long gown up the red carpet, and behind her came Daniel in his suit, the guests clapping thunderously. My whole world went empty. I could see nothing but Daniel. He held a single rose and knelt down in front of me, and the officiant's voice came to my ear. "Mr. Daniel, are you willing to stay by Ms. Ivy Sullivan's side for the rest of your life?" "I'm willing." I reached out to touch the rose and woke. The officiant's voice had been exactly Daniel's voice. I remembered now. It had been at a hotel at the coast. Daniel had recorded his own lines on his phone and played the part of the officiant himself. He'd bought a rose and said he wanted to stage a wedding with me. In the end, he said the words out loud, all on his own. I'm willing. Time goes by so fast. It had already been 10 years. I came back to the hall. The applause was still going. The officiant was saying many things, all beautiful, different from what Daniel had recorded. But Daniel's answer was the same. I heard him say it. I'm willing. So am I, just like you. The guests cheered, and in the middle of the cheering, Daniel kissed his bride at the Coast Hotel. Daniel kissed my lips. 20-year-old Daniel and 19-year-old Ivy had held a pretend wedding once, and that was enough. In the 11th year after I died, Daniel was 31, and he had a child, a little boy. He held him in the hospital room the same clumsy, careless way he'd once held Faith. His wife lay on the bed smiling gently at him. He'd been promoted to a diaper-changing dad. He learned to change diapers and mix formula. I watched the baby quietly. He was wrinkly, just like Faith had been, like a tiny kitten. Jesse brought Poppy along to congratulate him, and Daniel stood out in the hospital corridor smiling softly, with the joy of being a father for the first time. And all at once I remembered 11 years before, in a hospital corridor too, Daniel crying so hard he couldn't breathe. Everything changes. Every ache, every wound grows small with time. Faith was 6 now. Daniel had a harbor of his own. It was time for me to go. My soul was turning clear and thin, and suddenly I panicked. I realized there was so much I still hadn't said. Like, like how truly sad I was, like how I wanted to live and live well, like how I wanted to hold Faith and nothing more. I hadn't changed at all, not one bit. I was still selfish. I want to say I love you. And you'd better remember me. I love all of you, and you'd all better remember me, even if I'm leaving for good. Now, here's how it looked from Daniel's side. This is the 12th year since Ivy passed away. I'm 32 now. This morning, I drove out to the cemetery. Her parents were already there, holding a bouquet. Ivy's smile in the photograph was as bright as a flower in bloom. Her parents have grown old, so have I. Faith has started school. Everyone has changed. Only Ivy stays 19 forever. She'll be 19 for all time. I laid the flowers on her grave, and a strange, deep peace settled over me. I thought about a great many things standing there. I lost her when I was 20. Daniel at 20 was only a boy in love, naive, and stubborn. And so it took 10 years before I could take that step and walk into the hall of marriage. My wife is a calm, gentle woman, and she suits me. She knows about my past, and she doesn't hold it against me. Like she said, we've both grown up, and we each need a harbor. The moment I first held that little life squirming and dancing in my arms, I finally understood what a harbor means. It means the healing of pain. Time soothes the ache. A person can't stay trapped in their memories for the rest of their life. I've accepted how things are. The living have to keep moving forward, Ivy's parents, and me too. That night, I dreamed I was on the beach at the coast. Far off in the distance stood the 20-year-old me and Ivy, 19. A gust of wind blew through and tangled her long hair. The 20-year-old Daniel said something I couldn't make out, and then I heard Ivy's voice. She said, "Okay. Okay to what? I don't remember anymore." Thank you all for listening.